The supply chain breakdown is causing a lot of the inflation we see. And everyone's like, wait a second, why are you talking about deflation? That's coming next. People are not ready for it. I know the inflation's here. I buy gasoline. I shop in the grocery store. I get it. It's persistent. It's not transitory. I understand all that. But inflation has two major sources. One is the supply side, which is called cost push inflation. So that's energy price shocks, fertilizer shortages, strategic metal shortages, component suppliers who can't deliver stuff to factories in Germany and they're shutting down, et cetera. The other cause is from the demand side, and that's called demand pull inflation. Basically, it's psychological. Consumers pull demand forward. They're like, hey, I was thinking of buying a refrigerator. I better buy it today because the price is going to go up in 6 months. And in the 70s, we had both. It started with cost push with the Arab oil embargo, but it ended up demand pull. I was starting my career at the time. Your boss would just give you a raise. You didn't even have to ask. Inflation was going up so fast. Like, I better give this guy a raise. And here's another, $30,000 or whatever, because people would quit, and that sort of spun out of control until Volcker squashed it all. Right now, we do not have demand pull inflation. We do have cost push inflation. The difference is hugely important because cost push inflation from the supply side, it's real, prices go up, but it's self-negating. The old saying that, the cure for higher oil prices is higher oil prices, because when they get too high, people stop driving. They shut down various activities. By the way, if you're unemployed, you're not buying any gasoline because you're not going anywhere. I mean, that's kind of a nasty way of putting it, but that's how the cost push inflation tips into a recession and then prices come down. And we saw that in 1974. You had Jerry Ford and Alan Greenspan walking around with they had these win buttons, WIN, which stood for whip inflation now, except we had a recession and prices collapsed. Now, it came back by 77 for a lot of reasons, but right now we don't have demand pull, we have cost push. It will go away when this economy goes into recession. And then we're going to be talking about disinflation and deflation, which are, kind of close cousins. And the Fed's going to be out on a limb as usual, raising rates in the face of a recession and a price collapse. I don't know what the recession is a cure for. It's coming. I mean, the recession is coming, and Jay Powell said this. I mean, Jay Powell gave two speeches, August 26th, Jackson Hole, and September 21st at the press conference after the FOMC meeting that day. And the September 21st speech was almost like, well, just in case you weren't listening to me in Jackson Hole, let me tell you again what's happening. And then Jackson Hole, he was like Nancy Pelosi. He tore up a speech and wrote a new one, like literally the day before. It was 3 or 4 pages. It was really short. He used the word pain 3 times in one paragraph. I've been following Fed news for 45 years. I've never seen the word pain ever. But he basically said the same thing. But September 21st, he was even more blunt. He said, there's going to be a recession. It's going to be bad. Unemployment is going to go up. Get it straight. These things are going to happen. And that's what it's going to take to get inflation under control. But he went on and on about how inflation was job one because the Fed has this dual mandate, which never made sense, but it's the law. I mean, Humphrey Hawkins. The dual mandate is price stability and low unemployment. Those two things don't always go together. And sometimes you got to make trade-offs between the two. But right now, the trade-off is very easy, which is unemployment's really low. Now, I don't put much weight on it, but the Fed does. Again, put your Fed hat on. Unemployment's really low. If unemployment went from 3.5 at the moment, if it went to 4.5, 4.9, is that the end of the world? Well, that was considered pretty low in 2013 when they were doing QE4 or whatever. So they're willing to do that. And they also think the recession, if it comes, will be mild. But those two things together will get inflation under control. I mean, and what Powell said, he didn't say that their target is core PCE, personal consumption expenditure, price index, core meaning excluding food and energy. And everyone's like, why would you exclude food and energy? Again, I'm not here to debate it. That's what they do. So they want to get core PCE year over year to 2%. Powell did not say, we're going to raise rates until core PCE is 2%. He didn't say that. What he said was, we're going to raise rates until it's acting in a restrictive way on inflation, and inflation will come down on its own because rates will be high enough to cause that. At which point we, the Fed, will pause. And you say, well, when are you going to cut rates? He was like, the pause could be a year. So you're talking, forget this Fed pivot nonsense. I mean, you're talking 2024, if then, before they cut rates. It's like I remember in Vietnam, the old saying, we had to destroy the village to save it. We have to destroy the economy to save it. This is the latest in a long string of Fed blunders since 1913 seems to be their specialty, but that's what they're doing. And then beyond all that is there's a brewing global liquidity crisis, a global financial crisis that's different from a recession. It's financial panics and recessions are two different things. They can come separately. In 1998, we had a financial panic, but there was no recession. In 1990, we had a recession, but there was no financial panic. In 2008, we had both. They can come together. It looks like they might be coming together again. This is revealed in inverted yield curves. Major dealers are bidding at auction for treasury bills. The Fed will give you treasury bills with a phone call. All you have to just call the Fed and do a reverse repo with the Fed. They'll give you some treasury bills. But the banks are bidding at auction for treasury bills that yields to maturity lower than what the Fed will give you for a phone call. Why would you do that? The answer is the Fed bills cannot be rehypothecated. They cannot be used as collateral, but the auction bills can. So what that tells you is there's a collateral shortage. That means deleveraging balance sheets. It means financial distress. And we also see it not just in the treasury yield curve, which is inverted from right now 6 months to 10 years, but also the euro-dollar futures curve, which is even more troubling. It's not unprecedented, but it is rare, and it's not a good sign. But the Fed continues, raising rates in the teeth of this really bad data. So I look for a severe recession in the U.S., really global, because the global outlook is pretty bad. And then on top of that, possibly a global financial liquidity crisis worse than 2008. They could at least pause now, or maybe even cut rates. If everything I said is correct, and obviously I think it is, or I wouldn't be saying it, but if we're on the verge of a global liquidity crisis, as revealed by the euro-dollar futures curve and the treasury yield curve, and negative swap spreads and treasury bill auctions with the yield to maturity below what the Fed will give you for a phone call, all those things are happening. That's hard data, and it's a very, very troubling sign. Last seen in 2008, by the way, before the Lehman Brothers meltdown. So with the economy going into a recession on its own, with a global liquidity crisis brewing, why on earth is the Fed raising rates at all? That's not sustainable. So I would look for a recession, a more severe recession. That's one, combined with Fed tightening, interest rate hikes, balance sheet reductions, et cetera. That's one whole vector, and I wouldn't put any weight on a low unemployment rate. It ignores labor force participation rate, which is awful. It's down around 62% versus 70% in the year 2000. But beyond that, unemployment is a lagging indicator. Unemployment goes up after a recession begins. Employers are very reluctant to lay off employees. You got to pay severance. It's expensive to recruit and hire them back and train them. You pretty much wait until the recession has already started and you can, all right, I got to lay some people off. So it's not a leading indicator, it's a lagging indicator.